1927, I mean, we're looking at this, between 1927 and today, aquí. But if we're looking at the large sweep of history, we're looking at, más o menos proportionally, Fernando, más. I mean, if we're looking at 12,000 years, más allá. And so before Elsa and before the Spanish came, we're looking at a very, very long history of human interaction with this place. And when the Spanish come, when Escandón comes in the 1740s, 1750s, Escandón comes to find that there were a lot of people here. So this is when Escandón is given the commission. Cuando viene Escandón del centro de México, Escandón venía de España. Pero cuando viene Escandón, he gets a commission, he's an empresario, he brings 400 families. These are the families that settle the permanent communities here. Mier, Camargo, Reynosa, Laredo, these Revilla, Guerrero. These are the permanent communities. Now, before that, there were communities that didn't really make it because the native people would kill off the Spanish or whatever. And when the Spanish were killed off, they left their horses. When Escandón comes in 1748, 1749, he finds what he calls a wild horse desert. Los mesteños en un desierto. So habían bastantes caballos aquí. When they come, all of this here, about 95% of the entire thing that we call the valley today, all of this was what is called thorn forest. Thorn forest, imagine, thorn. All of this was brushland, super aggressive. There's a story to be told here about even before Escandón comes. I think that this story has so much to do with the through line to what Elsa is today and kind of the way that I open. There was a guy who walked through in the 1530s. Venía solo, no venía solo, venía con tres otros. Se llamaba Cabeza de Vaca. Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca. He was a Spanish explorer. His ship was wrecked off of Galveston Bay in the 1520s. Cabeza de Vaca walks through Texas with Dorantes y Castillo and a slave that they had, Estebanico. Cabeza de Vaca walks through here, and about 1534, más o menos, he crosses the river. Cabeza de Vaca would finally make it back to Spain, and in Spain he wrote a book about his travels here. He calls it La Relación, de Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca. En La Relación, he's got his daily entries of what he remembers seeing. And there's one entry where he says, esa gente india ama a sus hijos más que cualquier otra gente del mundo y los tratan con gran suavidad. These Indian people love their offspring more than any other people in the world, and they treat them with greatest mildness. This is a Spanish guy who's talking about the native people. The Coahuiltecans. Oh, by the way, in another entry, this guy, he also wrote, atravesamos un gran río, we crossed the great river. So these are the first words of anybody that we have that are intelligible to us of somebody seeing the river. This guy is Vaca in the 1530s. But in another daily entry, he says this about the people and how they were with their children. So the point here is that if we draw a historical through line and think about why people from Elsa, why people from this part of the world are the way they are with their children and their families, I will argue that there's something about our ancestral knowledge that we're not fully aware of, but that sort of lives in our subconscious. It's in the social DNA of why we are the way we are. Cabeza de Vaca dijo. Y Cabeza de Vaca también era un racista, eh? So he said a lot of racist things about the Indian people, but he said this too. He said these Indian people love their offspring. So I just wanted to offer that note, because not only does he see the river, but he says this about the people. If you ever wonder, why are people that way here? Well, you know what? Somebody observed that 500 years ago. Somebody observed, not about Mexicanos, there was no Mexican. Not about the Spanish. He was like actually drawing a contrast between these people. He was saying that about the what we call the Indian people. And these Indian people, a lot of tribes, were all kind of gathered together by a historian, and they were called Coahuiltecans.